Hello, I am presenting on Agamemnon, which is the first portion of the Oresteia by Aeschylus. Let's get started. Okay, so there are a few major, I guess, points that'll help move us along. There's the Watchman, the Herald, the King's Arrival, the Prophetess, and Vengeance. So these are some of the characters. Agamemnon is going to be the king of Argos and husband to Clytemnestra. This is going to be the chorus, which is the majority of the townspeople and guards and just like a general population. And they are who the main characters are going to be speaking to most of the time. The Herald is another side character. They come with Agamemnon and their army to greet the people of Argos. Clytemnestra is the queen of Argos and wife to Agamemnon. Aegisthus is going to be Agamemnon's hated cousin and rival and Queen Clytemnestra's lover. The Watchman is the person who spies the lit beacon of Troy. This is the captain of the guard, another side character who is loyal to Agamemnon. Cassandra is a Trojan prophetess and priestess of Apollo, who was enslaved and then made mistress by Agamemnon. Watchman. The Watchman has seen the beacon lit and runs to tell Queen Clytemnestra that Troy has fallen. The chorus and priests introduce Troy to the audience and tell the bloody history of Argos's reigning family. They tell of Agamemnon's decision to sacrifice his own daughter, Iphigenia. There will be retribution for those who have committed crimes and mass murders. Iphigenia was sacrificed under the pretenses that she would be married to Achilles. And this was done in order to allow the army to set sail for Troy. And they had been stranded for like a week or two, quite like enough for them to become extremely restless and run out of food and just be completely bored because they're trying to go to war. And then they have like an entire army of 1,000 ships of men and they can't move and they can't go anywhere. So then his oracle tells him that the gods ask of him his daughter. And so then he calls for his daughter and she comes willingly, and then she is led like a lamb to the slaughter and is killed. Her mother knows nothing of this. The Herald. So Queen Clytemnestra orders that sacrifices and incense be burned at every street corner until her beloved comes home. This is right after the beacon has been lit and they have the news that Troy has fallen and that after 10 long years of war, the army will be coming home at last. The ship has finally arrived and a herald comes ashore and meets the townspeople. What life except the gods is free from sorrow is what the herald says, because he starts to extol the virtues of their fighting and of the war, and he's just so grateful that he's home. And the townspeople are like, why are you proud of this? Why are you even here? And then he responds with, what good is there in counting the dead and making the living relive their pain again? Agamemnon arrives home in his chariot and Cassandra is by his side. Now that victory is my companion, I pray that she so remains. Clytemnestra arrives and sings the king's praises and speaks of her loneliness. She begins singing his praises, but it seems kind of shady at the time. She is kind of like, she seems a little bit too excited to see him. She talks about a lonely woman without her man and how worried she was. And she's just like, every single time that I heard that you might be hurt or wounded or whatever, my handmaidens had to remove the noose from my neck. I was so distraught. She was just like, she's just exaggerating and just kind of talking about how much she missed her husband. And you get kind of like a foreboding feeling from it. She tells Agamemnon to come and step down on the brightly dyed red tapestry she has laid at his feet. She says, let your journey home be strewn in scarlet. He points to Cassandra and tells everyone to treat her well. And Clytemnestra says, well, she is trying to convince Agamemnon to come into the house, and he's like, no, it's okay. Like, I don't want to step down on this expensively dyed carpet. And she's like, no, it's okay. We have enough money, kind of. And then she's like, our house is rich in crimson. But she keeps dropping these like red hints that she's like, I don't know. It seems very foreboding and very like she's trying to drop hints that she's like bathing the streets and bathing everything she can see in red, and it's very telling. So yes, so then he finally is like, okay, I guess I'll step down on it, but I'll take off my boots first. And so then he does. And then she tells Cassandra, hey, come inside, you're as welcome as you can be. And then Cassandra pretends like she doesn't actually know what she's saying. She just kind of stands there and like stares at her. And then finally Clytemnestra kind of like gives up and then goes inside. So the prophetess, Cassandra, starts weeping and cries to Apollo, who has destroyed her not once, but twice. She starts speaking of the horrors that have come to pass in this house before her. Cassandra calls for more vengeance to be done. She describes the scene about to unfold inside the house, and the crowd refuses to believe that it will happen. She weeps for Apollo because she's actually one of the priestesses of Apollo, and he abandoned her when her temple was ransacked and she was taken and then turned into a slave. And then she is then, I think, I'm trying to remember, but I can't quite. And then when she starts speaking of the horrors that have come to pass, this is her kind of like having these premonitions, and then the crowd is like, oh my gosh, she has the power of foresight. And then she starts like telling the crowd exactly what they already know of, like, do you know how much blood there has been shed in this house? And they're like, oh my gosh, how would you know that? How do you know that? And she just kind of has these things coming to her, and she's able to tell the past and also from the future. And then she starts describing the scene about to unfold, and it's of Agamemnon like dying, but like she's speaking kind of in riddles, and the crowd is trying to listen, but they also are like completely in disbelief at the same time. She talks about how Clytemnestra is killing him after he takes a bath. So she starts to prophesy her own death, and then speaks again of the crimes that have plagued the family to reinforce that she isn't lying. She talks about the cannibalism of the grandfather, the great grandfather, and she also talks about how Agamemnon has killed his own daughter, and how people have had sacrifices and cannibalism, and there's war crimes, and there's just like all of this bad blood, and all of these like terrible acts have been done, and she just keeps talking about it like, I don't know, like it's just coming to her. And so then she says Apollo gave her this power and he abandoned her. She's the victim of Apollo, the war, and now she's going to be the victim of Clytemnestra and Agamemnon as well. But then she prophesies Orestes coming and says, now the prophet who made me a prophet has led me into this fatal impasse. Instead of my father's altar, a chopping block. When I'm struck, my hot blood will make it flow red, but the gods will avenge our sacrifice. Another will come to be our nemesis, mother slaying son, his father's avenger. So she has no more to say and then goes inside to face her fate. Yes, to avenge her and Agamemnon's deaths, Orestes. Then Agamemnon starts to scream, I'm stabbed, I'm dying. The townspeople rally to help, but it's too late. Clytemnestra rolls out the dead bodies of Agamemnon and Cassandra on a platform, and she is glad and covered in blood. She says, it's all the same. Here is Agamemnon, my husband, and a corpse, the work of my right hand that has acted justly. She keeps going in these like rants and monologues about how she's like totally happy that this has happened. She tells them how she did it. She says, I coiled around him a huge rope like a net used to catch a fish, a rich and deadly cloak. I struck twice. Twice he screamed as his legs collapsed beneath him. When he was down, I struck a third blow, my special tribute to Zeus of the underworld, the keeper of corpses. He fell and breathed his life away quickly. A sharp spray of blood spurted out. A dark shower of crimson dew hit me, and I was happy, like the crop rejoicing in spring's God-given rain, the glory of the bud about to birth. That is where we stand now, old men of Argos. Rejoice, if that's your pleasure. I'm ecstatic. If 'twere right to pour offerings over the corpse, nothing would be more suitable than this blood. What a cauldron of accursed crimes did he fill with the house, and himself returned to drink. It is all the same. Here is Agamemnon, my husband in a corpse, the work of my right hand that has acted justly. So then Aegisthus enters with the soldiers and celebrates their victory over Agamemnon. His father is avenged, he who sucked on his own children and invoked ruin for children yet unborn. And then the captain of the guard, he starts to talk back to Aegisthus and is angry at the tyrant. The chorus lament and call for Orestes to come put an end to their treachery. And then they have a little like back and forth of the captain of the guard and Aegisthus, and finally Clytemnestra just like pulls him away and says, she says, ignore their whining insults, pay no heed, together we are masters of this house. And that is the end of this first play. To be continued in Chora 3, the libation bearers. Will justice be brought to this cursed house? Thank you.